Axios and others are reporting that we're very close to a breakthrough, which will essentially be an extension to the ceasefire before substantial talks, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Are we on the brink of a breakthrough?
Axios has no credibility, and it has been used by the White House to manipulate markets. And a lot of people have been making a lot of money due to Axios. So I don't take anything that it says seriously. What is happening, or what has happened, is that we were close to an agreement, and I think it's different elements have been more or less made public. But then Trump walked away. We saw his rant yesterday, and the United States also carried out aggression against Iran last night, and that has made the Iranians very suspicious. But the Iranian position is not going to change. Iran is not going to become flexible after Trump's rant. In fact, if it's anything, it's going to be the opposite. So Iran is not going to give any concessions to the United States simply because Trump is making threats or talking nonsense.
There are two versions of the deal sort of out in the public. One of them says the Strait of Hormuz will be opened with unfettered access and no charges to any of the ships. The other says Iran will be able to keep charging for the traffic through this international water. Which one is Iran's position, as you understand it?
I think it's pretty clear. Iran will remain in control, and Iran believes that there are environmental issues, there are insurance issues that will definitely have to be dealt with. So you can read into that all you like, but I think it's pretty clear what they're saying.
And that can't be mitigated, can it not, by the unfreezing of frozen assets? Because we know that Mr. Ghalibaf, who seems to be in charge, has been in Qatar recently trying to unfreeze $12 billion or more of frozen Iranian assets.
Well, Dr. Ghalibaf is definitely in charge. He's the person who's responsible for the negotiations, but he went to Qatar to make sure that the United States, assuming that the deal is signed, the United States can't cheat Iran and say that the assets will be released and then refrain from releasing them. So they went there to agree upon a mechanism to make sure those assets are released, because we have very bad experiences with the United States. After the nuclear deal was signed in 2015, the United States cheated Iran. And on every occasion when we've had agreements with the United States, they've cheated us and used loopholes in order to refrain from carrying out their obligations. So this time around, the Iranians are not going to allow that to happen. And especially since the Americans need the Strait of Hormuz open to those ships that belong to Iran's adversaries, they will have to take Iran's demands seriously.
Now, one of the things the Americans obviously want is a guarantee that Iran won't pursue a nuclear weapon. Is that something Iran would say, given it was essentially its position before?
Well, you've answered the question. Look, the Americans know that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. The Americans know that Iran was never pursuing a nuclear weapon. Joe Kent said that in his resignation letter. Tulsi Gabbard said it under oath. The IAEA knows that. The nuclear program, human rights, terrorism, all of these are about Israel. The West supports ethno-supremacism in Palestine. Iran opposes to it. So Iran has been antagonized for decades. That's the real story. Joe Kent, in his resignation letter, said specifically that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. Western media won't report that, for the most part. He said Iran is not a threat to the United States.
But
so why was there a war?
But isn't it because your enriched uranium got to 60%? You know, which is way in excess of what you need for a civilian program and is quite close to weapons grade. Obviously, that was going to raise suspicion.
Well, no. Why did Iran produce enriched uranium at 60%? Because we had a nuclear deal and we made significant concessions. The United States under Obama cheated us, and then under Trump, they exited the deal. And then the Europeans and the British, instead of compensating, they obeyed Trump. And so the Iranians waited 2 full years as the West was violating all of their commitments. And then after 2 years, the Iranians resumed their program and they enriched uranium to 60% as leverage to put pressure on them. They know that, we know that, everyone who's been following the case knows that. But this is not about the nuclear program. This is all about supporting this genocidal regime in Palestine.
So do you think we are going to see progress? I mean, you're sounding quite hopeful that there is a lot of agreement.
No, I'm not hopeful and I'm not skeptical. This is Trump. And I don't think anyone has an answer. The Trump regime is completely unreliable. He'll say one thing today and say something else tomorrow. He'll say one thing in the morning and say something else in the afternoon. He'll say one thing in one sentence and the next sentence he'll say something else. So we don't know. But whatever happens, the Iranians will make sure that the United States fulfills its obligations, unlike on previous occasions, and the Iranians will use their leverage. And you know the situation with regards to the global economy. The Iranians are not going to allow the Americans to sign a deal and to try to undermine Iran by cheating the country. That's not going to happen this time.
And can you just give us an insight into that? I mean, because you were at the talks in Pakistan, weren't you? I mean, give me a sense of sort of how difficult it is to negotiate with the Americans from what you saw.
The Americans are not in charge. The Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime, Netanyahu, these are the ones who are in charge. They're the ones who are controlling the fate of the West. Why do you have serious economic problems in the UK today? It's because of this war. Who imposed this war on Iran? The United States. Who made the decision? Joe Kent, in his resignation letter, the former head of counterterrorism, a Trump appointee, said that in the resignation letter, people can look it up, the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime. So they're the ones who have wrecked the oil market, and they've wrecked the petrochemical market. They've wrecked the markets across the board when it comes to fertilizer, when it comes to helium, when it comes to aluminum, everything. So they've wrecked everything basically because they are in charge.
Just finally, I mean, can you tell us, what should we read into the fact that Iran is now reopening the internet to ordinary people?
Well, the Iranians, well, first of all, the internet was always open for Iranian websites and Iranian apps.
Yeah, the international
and the Iranian
website.
version. Yes. Well, because back then, the Americans and the Israelis were using the internet to assassinate Iranian scientists, Iranian academics, Iranian leaders. They would monitor the families of my colleagues. And then when a colleague would go home to see his family, they would target the apartment building and slaughter everyone inside. So for the sake of security, they shut down the internet. Now, for the time being, it's open. If the United States and the Israeli regime resume aggression, then they will have to go back to where we were before. But we need to have the internet open because there's business, there's trade, there's communications. They can't, there has to be a balance. But one thing is for certain, and that is that as long as the West allows Netanyahu to continue the genocide in Gaza and now to pursue a genocide in southern Lebanon, we will not have any stability in the region, nor will the global economy be stable. And the ruinous situation that people across the board are experiencing today in the West and elsewhere is because of Netanyahu, the Israeli regime, and the Zionist lobby.
Professor Marandi, thank you very much.
Thank you.